Alright guys, your boy Ryan Thomas here, and sorry I don't have another phone to review at the moment because I'm trying to get the money that I sold my 6p for, and it's taken a while to go through. But I'm about to commit YouTube suicide, and that is to do an Android versus iOS debate. Now this is just my opinion purely. I have taken some inspiration from other people and tried to kind of figure out and try and evaluate the people I know who use this OS and the people who use this OS and the similarities between the users and stuff. And yeah, anyway, let's get into it. I'm just going to say one thing before we move on to this video. Android runs on over 20,000 different devices, and within those there are different versions of the devices, and iOS runs on basically a handful apart from that. But I'm going to tell you something that might blow your mind. The iPhone 4S came out in late 2011. That can now run iOS 9. Now that's not the newest one, or it's the newest OS that you can use right now, but it's not iOS 10. It's not the newest OS that we've seen previewed. iOS 9, the current OS, can be run very laggy, yes, but it can be run on an iPhone 4S. You know what phone came out at that time? The HTC Thunderbolt. And you know what OS that can run? Android 4.0, and that's an upgrade. Anyway, that's just something I wanted to tell you to kind of blow your mind, a little bit of a fun fact there. That kind of proves a point, but I'll kind of get into that a little bit later anyway. So I'm going to take an advantage of iOS now. It is clean. It's a very clean, very standardized mobile operating system. It looks the same on your iPhone 4S as it does on your iPhone 6s Plus, as it does on your iPad mini, as it does on your iPad Pro. It looks pretty much the same everywhere, and that's really useful, and I'll tell you why. If you're nerds watching this video, then you might not get what I'm talking about on iOS, but you'll definitely understand what I'm saying about Android. And guys, if you're less nerdy, you'll know what I'm talking about on iOS, but you won't know about Android. It's very different. Alright, a little bit of a story. My mum's a little bit older, and she doesn't really use tech all that much. I mean, she uses her PC, which she loves, and it's a custom built PC, and she loves that. But in terms of her mobile operating systems, she got an iPad for Christmas, and I've given her my iPhone 5, and she loves it because when she learns something new about the iPhone 5, in software on iOS, she can then use that on her iPad, and she loves that. And I know to you nerds and people who are very used to picking up new devices all the time, that might seem absolutely stupid. But to people, and there are a lot of them, who aren't like us and can't pick up tech as easily, it is really useful to be able to transfer those skills over because it's a more tied-in experience. Another advantage is, like I kind of showed you, iOS to support some really old hardware, and it gets a lot of flack, Apple does, because apparently they don't support older hardware. If you look at the specific release dates of their devices compared to their direct competitors, HTC and Samsung and LG, you can actually see that, wow, Apple really does support their older market more than these other companies. And I've got to say right now, before people start killing me in the comments, it's because iOS runs on such little hardware and such a small amount of different devices, whereas obviously an Android runs on thousands of devices. And something that I feel and I've experienced firsthand and is just amazing is the efficiency and optimization of iOS. Again, can't say this enough, iOS runs on a very small amount of hardware, and the optimization is ridiculous. The iPhone 6s Plus, which I reviewed, has a near enough 2500 mAh battery and basically doubles most other phones' batteries in terms of the time that it lasts, and they've got like 3000 plus mAh. This is not because, oh, I'm just being nice, or oh, this, that, or the other. iOS is extremely well optimized. I mean, you can leave that phone on standby and it'll probably last 2 or 3 weeks. It is ridiculous. Android has got a huge amount better with obviously DOS and stuff, but Apple are just really good at optimizing their hardware. I mean, Apple are just really good at making the most out of the hardware that they use. Again, the Apple A9 is a dual core chip and is able to keep up with pretty much all of the newest 6 and 8 core chips, and even the Snapdragon 820, which is a quad core chip. To think that a dual core chip can keep up with those CPUs is kind of ridiculous. Now I'm going to please you Android fanboys, I'm going to move on to the disadvantages of iOS. Firstly, it's very simple. You can't customize it. Why shouldn't, even if I do want it simple, you should at least give me the option to customize it. Why are you not letting me customize it? Why are you not letting me mod it? This is something that I've personally had a battle with. It is so difficult to customize the phone because it is so locked down. And there's a reason for that, and that's the optimization and the security that you get on iOS. But it's still something that is a pretty fundamental flaw, and that is the fact that you can't add the widgets to the home screen, you haven't got an app drawer, you're not able to easily customize the menus and install new skins and new ROMs and new kernels, and yes, that is quite difficult, and that is something that you tech heads will love, but the iOS users don't really care about, and that's, you know, that's just something I needed to say. iOS also comes in a small amount of options, like I said. So you're getting the tablet experience on an iPad mini, an iPad standard size and an iPad Pro. And then on the phone side, you're going from a 3.5 inch to a 4 inch to a 4.7 inch to a 5.5 inch display. Whereas, you know, Android kind of runs on pretty much anything. The advantages of Android then. Firstly, can be modded easily, can be heavily customized quite easily. My friend Rob, I'm not sure if you've seen him on the channel, he let me do the video of the P8000 from Elephone. That phone is still going strong today and he loves it. You could not replicate that phone. He has modded it so much with all his custom little things that he's done to it and made the little swiping options which you would typically find on something like a Galaxy series device, on the Edge series devices. He's got that on his Elephone. He has so easily customized that to his own needs that, you know, every month or so it seems like he's changing the ROM. And it's really cool. It's the ability to be able to do that. For him, that's really awesome because he can tailor the phone the way he wants it at that specific time. If his mood changes, he just goes and installs something different. Not something you can really easily do on Apple's OS. Another great thing about Android is it can be as simple or as advanced as you like. You can have app drawers and sub-menus and swipe-in menus and stuff, or you can install a launcher or a ROM that puts everything on the home screen, and it is very simple. This is what I love about Android, it's the fact that you can pick it up as a new user or you can pick it up as an advanced user, and that's kind of the beauty of it. With iOS, it's very similar, but the tech heads won't get as much of a thrill, obviously, using iOS as they probably would on Android, for obvious reasons. Android obviously gets all the newest features from its hardware. It's very difficult to try and compare the software without comparing the hardware as well. But with Apple, they do tend to roll out their features, you know, a year, maybe 2 years later. And this is so that they can cherry pick it and make it absolutely perfect, or at least as close to perfect as they can get. Whereas with Android OEMs and people who make Android phones, they implement new features all the time. And so with Android, it does tend to have a lot of support for new hardware, such as new fingerprint scanners, new technologies, and IR blasters, anything that you want. Most OEMs just support it anyway. Okay, so the disadvantages. It can be compromised quite easily with security flaws. Apparently over 70% of Android phones are insecure, and this is something that obviously is very bad. You don't want your stuff being taken, your personal information being taken, but I've never really known anyone personally who's had an issue with that, so I'm not sure. But yes, apparently it is very easily compromised. Next, it actually can be very daunting for people to use the Android OS because iOS is so ubiquitous right now. Everything seems to run iOS, you know, there are a lot of iPhones, there are a lot of iPads in the world, and so moving over to Android might scare you a little bit. You know, you haven't got the simple home button and lock button, you might have hardware buttons or software buttons or capacitive buttons, you might have extra ways of interacting with the device, you might have different HCIs, and this is something that, you know, can be daunting for especially older people or people who don't use tech as often as we do. Again, comparing to the iOS, it's very difficult to find devices that are almost like identical. Like I said, my mum likes the fact that she can use her iPhone 5 and her iPad mini too, because they're very similar, and if she picks up a skill on one, she can use it on another. With Android, it's a little bit different. Yes, that is still totally possible, but you can go from an HTC heavily skinned phone to a Samsung heavily skinned tablet, and it just doesn't work as seamlessly. It still works, don't get me wrong, but not as seamlessly. And again, if you use a Nexus, if you go from a Nexus XP to a Nexus 7 or something, then you're gonna have the same experience as the Apple. The difference is Apple, pretty much every time it's the same. With Android, you kind of have to cherry pick your devices to get them very similar. Now I'm gonna say something that I'm not sure if both kind of groups will like, but I am going to mention it because this is my personal opinion, my personal experience, and the people that I see owning these devices. With Apple devices, especially the Apple fanboys, I'll talk about the fanboys. The fanboys tend to be into their fashion, maybe not, you know, a fashion glamorous person or whatever, but they tend to be more into their design and aesthetic. And they also do tend to argue that it's very simple to use and doesn't crash as often, and that's one of the main things about it. Obviously, I love the efficiency of Apple products, but this is, you know, this is something different. Then you've got the Android fanboys who tend to be absolute chronic nerds. I'm sorry guys, but you both have like your absolute issues and you also have your strengths. And that's what I'm trying to convey here. It's very difficult to be impartial, but I am, and I've learned to be impartial over the years, being a reviewer and being someone who does tend to recommend phones to people, not only over the internet, but to people in person. It tends to be that a lot of the Android fanboys are going, oh, but I can't customise my OS, oh, you've only got 2 cores, you haven't got all these specs. And then you've got the Apple fanboys going, oh, but it's very simple, cannot be cracked, cannot be hacked, all this. Both of which are pretty much lies. I mean, Apple software can be hacked, it just tends to be a little bit harder to do. And Android hardware, yes, it does tend to have a higher spec on paper, and it does tend to look more impressive, but in person it's very difficult to tell a difference between a 6S Plus and something like a 6P or a Galaxy S6. I don't know. It's something that really, you guys both have your issues, and the fact that there are arguments in my comment section are actually kind of funny and they kind of entertain me, but at the same time you guys should just get along. It doesn't matter what OS you use or what OS that you want to use or the OS that you absolutely adore. It just matters that you guys are having a good time. I'm a reviewer and I always look out for the consumer. You know, I'm going to give you guys my honest opinion, whether it's bad or it's good. Hopefully I've conveyed that in this video. I love iOS for its ability to get old and young people involved, and it's really simple and the efficiency of it is incredible. I also love Android because it kind of invites people to tinker around with things and make something of their own, make something unique and make something that they're going to enjoy. So overall guys, my overall verdict is I can't pick. If I had the money, I'd have both iOS and Android in some form of phone. I'd probably have a 6S Plus like I did before, and I do miss that phone. And I'd love to try something like the OnePlus 3 or the Galaxy S7. Both of these are great options and you guys just have no issue with it. I love iOS and I love Android, and I hope you guys do as well. I mean, obviously there are some differences and there are still going to be haters and there are still going to be fanboys. But that's, I guess, the fun of the internet, is having you guys argue. I don't know. I hope you will get along, and I will see you in the next one. Again, sorry for this whole not having a phone to review or device to review this week. I'm trying my hardest, and I'm selling as many products, and it just takes a long while to get the money in because eBay just likes to take their time. But yes, I will be getting new phones in. It's very possible I'll have a OnePlus device and a Nexus next time you see me, or I might have a Samsung device or an HTC device. I don't know. Either way, it's probably not going to be an iPhone because it seems like I've reviewed pretty much every iPhone under the sun, and that's quite easy because there aren't that many. Anyway, I'll see you guys in the next video. Hope you have enjoyed.